Hi, everyone. Welcome to Logtech Live, the May 3rd edition of Logtech Live, broadcasting to you live from steamy Washington, D.C. It has been a incredibly hot week. I hope I'm not like sweating on screen right now. It's so hot these days. It's like a little sneak preview of the summer ahead, but super delighted to be here. As always, I'm Eric Johnson. I'm the senior technology editor at the Journal of Commerce. When I'm not doing this show, first and third Fridays of every month, discussing my favorite topic, logistics technology. I have a fantastic guest today. So if this is your first episode, you picked a good one, as always. If you're a regular attendee or you watch the show regularly, thank you so much for your support. We have great guests today, someone I've known for a very long time, who's been in the industry for a very long time. Definitely not a startup founder who we often have on this show, but someone who's got an incredible array of experience around both the logistics world and the technology world. I'm going to introduce him in a sec. But before that, lots to get through as normal. Inland Distribution Conference, Inland 24, our conference around the surface transportation market in North America. You've heard me talk about it. It's coming up this fall, September 30th through October 2nd in downtown Chicago, beautiful downtown Chicago. Early bird pricing ends May 13th. Even if you know me, even if you know someone else, I doubt you're going to get better pricing than this right now. So definitely encourage you to sign up right now. You are not going to be sorry. We have a fantastic lineup of speakers and just sessions and experiences, and we're blowing this thing out this year. So please get your registration in early, and because you're not going to get better pricing than right now. If you go on site, you don't need a code or anything. It's just early bird right now. So go ahead and do that. Registration is in the comments. Information about that. I will be in just about a month, like a month from tomorrow, I will be in Philadelphia for Home Delivery World in lovely Philadelphia. So please join us there. And I will be doing a session around the LTL market on the 6th, I believe. So really excited to be there and really excited to meet with everyone who's at this event. First time for me going. So I'm super excited to check this one out as well as lead that discussion. So make sure if you're in town, stop me and say hi. One other thing, IAPH is later this year. It's in Hamburg in October. If you go to World Ports Conference, IAPH, if you do a Google search, you will find the program as it is right now is up. I'm involved, as I have been for the past few years. I'm doing a couple sessions around technology in the port space. So really encourage you to attend that if you are there and in any way involved in the ports and technology space. Would love to see you in Hamburg, October, I want to say 8th through 10th in lovely Hamburg. So that's the conference setup over the next few months. We have lots of news. I was not writing as much as I normally like to write for most of 24, but have gotten back on my writing horse over the last couple of weeks. And I've written a few stories about visibility technology specifically. This story focused a little bit on some of the challenges that visibility providers are facing as the market has normalized post-pandemic. And also it looked at it through the prism of, do shippers want visibility to come from a standalone provider, or do they want it channeled through their 3PL, right? And it's not a black or white issue. Every shipper is different. Some of them are very happy to have their 3PL offer it to them. Some want to own it and want their 3PL to just be kind of an operational partner to them. Some have some sort of hybrid, right? Like they want the data, the shippers want the data, but they want their 3PL to sort of offer them visibility updates. Again, similarly, some want the data, some want an application from a software provider because they haven't built a BI tool to sort of capture those milestones. So it's across the board, and I explore some of the permutations of that in this piece. But it's a challenging market, right? Like there hasn't been any consolidation of the ocean visibility market since the pandemic, even as the market has gotten tougher and dollars have dried up a little bit around pure visibility. As you recall, everybody was hot and bothered about visibility during the pandemic. There was a ton of VC investment flowing into it. That has slowed. The urgency has slowed a little bit. It hasn't gone away because obviously we still have Red Sea, Baltimore, all the things that make containerized supply chains challenging. Those have not gone away, but the urgency has definitely slowed. So I go check out this story if you get a chance. This was interesting to put together. Another visibility story. All three of my stories this week are visibility stories. Hapag-Lloyd. This is a topic we've discussed a lot on this show. 2 years ago, they made the decision to invest in sensors, physical sensors for their entire dry box fleet. First container line to do that. This week, they announced the first product that sort of sits on top of that investment. It's a visibility tool that for shipments that are booked through them, either on carrier haulage or merchant haulage. For carrier haulage, meaning they're handling the dray move, the service is free. If you as a shipper are handling the dray move or your service provider is, it's $15 per container. This is a manifestation of that investment. They have about 2/3 of the sensors implemented or deployed on their fleet. But this is the first sort of customer-facing product that they've rolled out that's sitting on top of that investment. Other container lines, O&E and Zim, have made similar investments. It'll be very interesting to see kind of what other carriers decide to equip their entire box fleet with sensors, and then what products, whether it's an internal like asset optimization yield kind of tool, or whether it's a customer-facing thing that they can theoretically monetize or provide as a value add to their customers. So we'll be watching. Last story to highlight is another visibility story where I talked about how some of the problems around tracking containers as they transition across modal handoffs, especially under rail, continues to be an issue, and how some of the pure play ocean visibility providers are addressing that situation. A lot of this is just data, different data formats. A lot of it is sort of walled garden around rail data, which I dive into in this story. Really, the challenge is shippers want that continuous kind of and normalized data as the shipment moves from vessel to terminal to potentially short dray move to rail ramp, or if it's on dock rail, straight from the terminal to the rail. And it's this, I get this feedback all the time from shippers. Here we are in 2024, often still having the same challenges that they did when I was first reporting on visibility almost 2 decades ago. So try to delve into why this is such a challenge and what's being done to try to solve that challenge from the pure play visibility providers on the ocean side in this story, but certainly not a solved problem at this point. Okay, well, that's enough for visibility. We're gonna transition. I mean, visibility sort of underpins everything, but we're gonna transition into a little bit broader discussion about logistics technology today with my guest, who is Bryn Heimbeck, CEO of a company called Tradetech, which has been around a very long time. And I'm really happy to have you on, Bryn. We've known each other forever. You've been at AOC events, quote you often in stories. Really delighted to have you on Logtech Live.
Thanks, Eric. It's a pleasure to be here, and I've enjoyed our discussions back and forth for a long time.
Cool. Well, so before we dive into a million topics that we could talk about, first give people a bit on your background and then what Tradetech is.
My background, I started in the shipping business. I wanted to do something international, so I ended up selling container space on the streets of Chicago back in the 80s, and I had no idea what we were getting into. Back then, people like Ace Hardware were importing 15% of their goods. That's changed. Global trade's changed. And I did that for the first part of my career, and then I started looking at what technology could do, and we started playing with this thing called the internet and what a server could do if you could be everywhere. So we built a system that's a platform. It's globally available. end-to-end processes, and we tie that into customs agencies for offshore declarations for security purposes. We feed people's customs brokerage systems. We give them visibility and control. So everything you need to manage that supply chain process from beginning to end. That's what we do.
And your customers are BCOs, 3PLs, customs brokers. You have multiple categories of customers, right?
Yeah, we've even got a couple of carriers that are running on us, but primarily it's been 3PLs, and a large part of that has been regulatory compliance. How do I meet the regulations coming from U.S. Customs, Japan Customs, and very shortly the EU? And the concern is, how do we have international trade, which is so important, but not make ourselves vulnerable to terrorism? You know, we've got people shipping stuff, and we want them to ship good stuff, not bad stuff to us.
Right.
So what customs are doing is they're taking information from before the cargo loads on board, and they're vetting it. And so I'm laughing about visibility. The only person involved in global trade today that's not saying, if only I could see it, are the customs agencies. You don't show them, you can't come. It's that simple.
I love the quote you say often, which is the guys with the guns and the badges are the ones who have the best data, or something. So something like I'm
gotta keep the guys with the badges and the guns happy.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that we're going to come into more of that. I mean, I was laughing about your introduction because I don't think there's a post-pandemic. I think we're going to go to post-pandemic pretty quickly.
Yeah, true. It's true. I know. I think the pandemic sort of awakened people more than it was something that we turn our back on. So, okay. You wanted to show a couple data points to sort of maybe underpin our discussion.
Yeah.
And then we'll talk. I think we're going to talk a little bit about the market as it is and what may be coming, and then how tech sort of helps navigate what may be coming.
Perfect.
What volumes are kind of healthy right now? Yeah, they're pretty healthy right now.
They are, and Nicole, if you can bring up that slide, I think we might be going into the post pandemic. Look, the blue line is 2020. This is what it looked like leading into the first time of us really experiencing congestion. These numbers are from Descartes. They put them out every month.
I would have gone with peers, but I understand,
Yeah, I mean,
I have a contractual obligation to say that, but
you can't even. I even put my competitor up here for credibility's sake. But
yes, right.
The thing is, normally they've got 4 or 5 lines, and people get confused looking at these lines. What hits me is I look at the blue line, and I look right where the red circle is. That's July of 2020. And that's when we first started really experiencing congestion. And then it just didn't go away for the next 3 years. And my buddies at Costco told me, Bryn, this is back in 2020. They said, these numbers aren't double or off the charts. They're just where we predicted we would be in 2025, 2026. We just got there early. Mm-hmm. And so if you look at the orange line, that's where we are up through March. April's higher. And this is slack season numbers. Peak season's coming. It's around the corner. We're just getting into May. The reports in the market are vessels are filling up. Pricing, JOC reported just 2 days ago that pricing's hitting 4,200 on the spot market.
Yep.
All of these are
capacity is tight out of Asia for sure. Yeah.
Right. And so, and we've got peak season to come. So it's like forecasting the weather. It could do anything. But if you see something, if you know that at rush hour you have traffic and you're looking at it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon and 5 o'clock's coming, and it's already full on the roads, you can only predict that we're going to have slowdowns.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I'm saying. So it ties into what's different this time. In the pandemic, we knew it was a surge, or we hoped it was a surge. We thought we can get through this. This time around, this is the new economy. We've got huge growth, consistent growth. Thank God. I mean, the economy is doing pretty well. We keep these job numbers that keep coming out: 200,000 this month, 300,000 the next month. By the way, that's Feb and March numbers.
Yep.
Those people consume. They make stuff. They get paid. They consume. And what we're importing are consumer non-durables. So I think this is all good for the market. I think it's good for the U.S. But the challenge is going to be, how are we going to bring it? How are we going to deal with this?
Yep.
Can we handle it? So first thing we need to be thinking about is the P&W as an alternative routing.
Yep.
Last time around, going directly to the East Coast really became a strategy. Great, except Panama Canal's been down. It's coming back to normal.
Right.
But
I think I saw that there's about 27 transits per day now, and it should be at about 36, something like that.
That's the numbers I was thinking as well. And
Yep.
and that'll get us through the summer, maybe. Maybe that's another route. Suez Canal is going to be a problem for a while.
Yep.
So I'm going back to visibility. What can we do differently? I think what we really have to say, how do we use tech to do something differently? And I started playing with some numbers. Nicole, can you bring up that second slide? So a lot of what we do about 200,000 AMS entries and ISF entries per month for our customer base.
And Bryn, for people who are not in the trade compliance world, AMS and ISF are
the 24-hour rule. The U.S. Customs, it's an
advanced manifest
system. The regulation says you must transmit to customs in a very prescribed format all of the details on the bill of lading. Who's the shipper? Who's the consignee? What's the route? How many containers? What their numbers are?
Yep.
And
the ISF is the importer security filing, and these are required documents to import goods into the U.S.
And the importer
people context who didn't know.
Right, and that's the ISF are the commercial parties affiliated with the shipment. So it's not just the shipper, but who manufactured it, who's the seller. These are, and if you combine the two, it's like 85% of the customs entry.
Yeah, it's the who and the what essentially of the entry. Yeah. So
exactly.
Sorry, I didn't mean to derail. I just wanted.
No, and I think it's really important to bring that up because the regulation says you must send it to customs no later than 24 hours prior to the cargo going onto the vessel, not even sailing. It's before that. They want to vet it. They want to make sure that it's not bad guys, and then it sits there. And we got to be thinking about what are we going to do with it. So this is all the data that the customs broker doesn't know about the shipment. The one thing the broker knows, if they cleared one of these last week, it's the same thing this week. That classification of the cargo, what's the tax rate, what other data has to be done, that the broker knows.
Yeah.
What they don't know is what ship it's on, how many containers, and all of that stuff. That's been the traditional, we don't know until the ship comes into view. So customs clearance is a destination function, has been a destination function, and therein lies the problem. So customs is a network. You don't just send information to them, they send information back to you, and they send it to other people. This is how the ports work. port knows they can't release cargo until they've been told it's released. You like to laugh. Yeah, the guys with the guns and the badges, they can be really mean sometimes. And if you let cargo go out of the port without it being customs cleared, everything gets ground to a halt very quickly. They have a lot of authority. So let's go back to that slide for a second. I'm sorry we brought it up, but we get when customs is cleared. And I looked at our data and it shocked me. The blue part is cargo that's cleared before the vessel arrives. That's the small part. And the big part on the top, which I don't know if green's the right color, maybe it should be red.
Red, yeah.
That part, if you look closely, 44% of the cargo is not customs cleared even after the vessel arrived. And I don't mean to.
And then that means, from a process perspective, that means the container gets discharged from the vessel, is put in some sort of stack in the terminal, and it still has not been cleared.
It's not ready to go. It's not ready to roll. It cannot roll. It cannot move out until it's customs cleared and carrier released. We'll get there in a second. But
yep.
But the key here is, wow, if our whole focus is on mobility and efficiency, that we don't care if the terminal has full electronics or automation. If the cargo's not able to move out because of customs,
doesn't matter how automated it is.
Doesn't matter how automated it is. And it's not, sorry, I misspoke. It's not because of customs. It's because the importer hasn't put the information, hasn't put together a process to make sure it's cleared before it departs, or before it arrives, sorry. So, wow, you've got all this information that's been transmitted. The shipper has had to give it to the 3PL or the carrier before it departs in order for it to transmit over to customs. It's 85% of the customs entry. Everybody talks about a data standard. Well, there's only one US Customs and they only have one system. So by default, it's a data standard. There's only one way to do it. Yeah. And we all do it. Every single ocean carrier, every single NVO, every single customs broker is tied in, can transmit this. So we have a data standard. What are we doing with it? Nothing. That's where I get to. If you can transmit AMS and ISF from before the cargo leaves, well, that's the shipper seller has the commercial invoice and packing list ready to go also. Let's get that to the broker. Let's start feeding this information to the customs broker.
At the same time that the ISF and AMS are filed.
Exactly.
Yeah. But why? So why does that not happen? I mean, what is the reason that it has not historically happened that way anyway?
I don't know, Eric. I mean, I'm not talking about AI here or something.
Yeah.
Hey, if we only invent this thing, this has been going on for 25 years, 23 years, and we're just not thinking about it the right way. If we change our thinking, maybe it's all sitting there. We've got it. There's no, I need to do something. Maybe that's why I want to get on and talk with you about it today. This isn't a big deal.
So just to tie this together, what you're saying is that the cargo volumes that plagued us in 20, the ramp up in cargo volumes, and what we're seeing right now, and the trend upward right now, is coming home to roost, and we don't have the process in place to release the cargo ahead of when it arrives in port. And so we may be running into the same congestion issues later this year because we haven't really changed that process in 4 years.
Yeah.
Is that a fair summation?
That's a really fair summation. And I'll add to that. It's always easier to avoid hitting the red line than to bring yourself back down under the red line.
Yeah.
And avoid hitting it in the future. And so this is low-hanging fruit. Let's start thinking about how to use it. And with that, you've got visibility and whatnot. the next part of what to do with that is also starting to think about peel-off stacks, but I don't want to jump too far forward. I think this one's just low-hanging fruit.
Okay. We could, and I think we have in the past talked a lot about talked for hours about this, but there's lots of other topics. OSTRA D&D. We are now 2 years since the passage of OSTRA 22, which set out to solve some of the problems associated with D&D assessment, billing. There was just a rulemaking announced in February that's going to go into effect later this month around stipulating that the bill has to go to the importer of record. It cannot go to one of their representatives, or in some cases, it used to go to everybody and anybody, to whoever, to increase the chances of someone paying the bill. How do you, as an importer or a 3PL acting on behalf of an importer, how do you view the efficacy of OSTRA, or how should I view, if I'm in their shoes, how should I view whether this has been a successful rulemaking law?
All right. Well, you want my 2 cents? Somebody didn't, and you heard me talk about this. The word availability. Your cargo's available. You can't charge anybody until it's available. All right, well, I'll go back to my buddies with the badges and the guns. If you haven't customs cleared the cargo, it's not available. Don't start blaming the carrier. Don't start blaming the terminal. That's not their issue. In fact, the way this law was written, I hate to say this, but if you wanted 6 months of free storage on the terminal, don't clear your cargo. Not available. OSTRA says they can't charge you. I honestly don't think that this is going to stand up in a court of law because Evergreen got challenged already. And I learned from them, there's this thing called the incentive principle. And as an owner of the asset, they have the right to incent the customer to be efficient.
Yeah.
And OSTRA will be thrown out of court if it's ever challenged on the term availability, because availability is not defined. Availability means that it's customs cleared, it's carrier released, you've paid the carrier, and it's not available. And secondly, if you don't do that before the vessel gets here, and they have to go put it in a stack with a whole bunch of other guys that haven't cleared their cargo, and you're unlucky enough that they put it on the bottom and there's 4 guys on top of it, and that stack is completely chocker block full and there's nowhere to move the 4 containers, well, you're stuck and it's your fault. Boy, nobody wants to hear that, but we've got to clear cargo before the vessel arrives.
Right. It's an interesting point about, you were the first one, I think, months, weeks after OSTRA was passed. You're the first one to flag that the container available wording in the bill didn't align with the way systems were actually representing that milestone, right? And or it could be represented differently in 10 different systems. It could be represented 10 different ways. So without a uniform definition for that, how would the law sort of stand up across all of those different instances, right? And so that's been, in my head along this whole time and that's why I think the FMC has been fairly, they took a long time, longer than the bill required them to take. And they sort of ring fenced what they essentially made a rule about, because they tried to rule on something that could be definite, like you can only bill this party and you have to have these 14 data elements. But even within that, it's still not black and white, because if one of those is container availability, as you said, it's not definite across every single system.
And I like what they're doing. I mean, I like
it's from a good place. Yeah.
They're not getting double charged. I like that it's not the carrier or the trucker who has to pay for it. I think they need to sharpen it and put the pressure where the pressure belongs. I'll probably alienate half my potential customers by saying, hey, the importers have to change the process. It's up to them.
Right.
And the carriers aren't the bad guys in this thing. The terminals aren't the bad guys. They want to move this thing. They make money when their ship is moving, not when it's sitting there in congestion. So we've got to seriously consider, how do we change our business process and be ready to go prior. And the days of, well, if you need to understand, if only, we need to put that aside. If U.S. Customs can tell us that we have to do this and they've got the data, we need to look at it, take advantage of it, get our cargo cleared, ready to go. And then that's already going to take us a huge way forward.
It's been amazing to me to watch the focus on drayage, the focus on D&D that's emerged from a technology standpoint over the past few years. It's unlike anything I've seen in 20 years of reporting on this. It's clearly a pain point, and yet it feels still so ethereal in terms of every software vendor has a little bit different approach to this. Every shipper has a sort of, they're all feeling the pressure. It's now a significant financial line item they can point to say we need to get rid of this. But as you pointed out, I remember Lars Jensen in the middle of the famous analyst saying, in the middle of the pandemic, when people were complaining about the spiking ocean freight rates and the congestion that was causing everything to spike, and he said, this is not a carrier versus importer issue. This is an importer versus importer issue. This is certain importers who are taking advantage of contractual terms, and everybody else is paying the price for that. So to your point, yes.
Well, I think you make really two really good points there, Eric. One is, we see a lot of people addressing this with a system, with technology. The issue is that it's a destination issue. Mm-hmm. And the solutions they're bringing in are destination oriented. And then they keep going, but how do I get the data? How do I get the data? That I could do all of this if only I had the data. What we looked at, and what the promise of that we pursued going back, was the internet. If I'm working with people offshore to begin with, and I can see exactly what they do, they press save, I can see it. It's the old mainframe concept made global. Mm-hmm. I go into a different paradigm. It's not about if I could only, it's what do I do with it that becomes different. Then you can start saying, okay, I can see it coming. I can pre-book step back. I can talk to the warehouse about, hey, the vessel gets here. What are we going to do day 1, day 2, day 3, and set up? Because if they're not ready, can't get there. Then we can talk to the trucker. Then we can get the appointment. So we can be doing this all before that.
Sequentially, but way in advance of where it happens now.
Exactly. There's no new thing about planning makes perfect. Planning, watching what's going on, being ready for it, setting it up in advance. The more we do in advance, the smoother things run. I think that's the paradigm.
I don't know if we've solved the issue of why people still aren't handling it that way today. And I mean, I can think philosophically that logistics has traditionally been in reaction mode, right? Other parts of the organization make a decision. You as a logistics provider or as the logistics function react to decisions that your internal colleagues make, and you're subject to dynamics outside of your control because you're relying on third parties for virtually everything. You don't own the vessels, you don't own the terminals, you don't own the dray, except in certain situations. That's the only thing I can think of is like, it's a reactive mindset. and that's why the advanced planning has not been sort of built into the process. But
I think change happens slowly. Look, I'm always amazed at how quickly the internet hit the consumer, hit our kids. Actually, I date myself, but it was brand new. It was green earth.
Yeah.
Facebook came out and competed with nothing.
Right.
Google came out and competed with nothing.
Yeah.
International trade, containerization in particular, invested in technology back in the 80s because they had to track their containers. These containers were disappearing and becoming storage and whatnot. They had to put computer systems in place, and they invested not millions, not billions, but trillions of dollars in trying to do something state of the art.
Some of the carriers are still using those same systems for asset tracking.
They're married into 1990s technology.
Yeah.
And what I keep telling people is the US military was faced with the same issue. And that's where this massive investment went in to create the browser, HTML, JavaScript, and everything that we know as the internet.
Yeah. This
This is military industrial technology released to the consumer market, and people jumped on it. But global trade had already made an enormous investment in decentralized. That was the best technology in the 80s and 90s, decentralized computing.
Mm-hmm.
Put a server in Hong Kong. That's better than not having one at all. And now we can do it in Shanghai. Let's do that. And that's what happened with that evolution and the explosion of China and the development. What we're looking at, though, now is, what if I use that as a single platform? Multiple platforms don't work well together. If you could do, I have customers, they say they're running the same accounting software in all of their stations. That's great. Should all feed in, no problem, right? Oh, except that the chart of accounts, the core reference information for their accounting system is different in each one because it's on a different server, different head accountant, and they're also working in different currencies. So you can't just add these numbers together. And accounting's less sophisticated than global transportation. So if you put people on one place, one of the things that happens is you have the same data standard, the same core reference information. You don't have 25,000 account codes for the same customer. Mm-hmm. And that opens up the way for automation. So I think the industry's slow, not because they don't get it. I think they're slow because they've made an enormous investment. They have a huge IT teams set up, and those guys know how to write certain languages. They're married into certain codes. This is let's throw it away and try something different.
It's very hard. I would agree with you. I think one of the hardest things is all the technology providers that have these grand ambitions, some of them which are really, like, in a vacuum are amazing. They all require substantial change from the customers they're trying to sell into. So in lieu of that, of trying to, tackle that, you build a smaller piece of it that's a little more digestible, but it's less transformational, it's less impactful. And
there's a really interesting article out called "The End of Corporate Computing." My son, when he went off to college 15 years ago, sent it to me. Hey, Dad, you'll be interested in this. But the analogy is the evolution of electricity in 1900. If you wanted to use this really cool new energy source that transformed everything, you had to buy a dynamo from GE or Westinghouse, and you had a CEO on board. He was the chief electrical officer, and your own team, and you built and made your own electricity, and it changed right down to the architecture of your building. You went vertical instead of horizontal. And that went on and on for a while, except for these two guys, Edison and Tesla, in the private sector, doing things. evolving it. And piece by piece by piece, it became more effective to use somebody else's power, to use what became a utility.
Mhm.
And today, we don't make our own electricity unless the power goes out. I mean, we just turn it on. It's vastly easier to do that. And this guy was projecting that we're in transition. We're not at the end of something. We're at the beginning of something. And we're probably, the tech is going to become more of a municipality, something that a variety of people are using. They're interacting with each other. They're building communities. They're asking themselves, what could the community do that I can't do individually?
Like
I think there's an interesting future there.
Yeah, that's interesting to think about. I still don't know how that all comes together. I'm not a futurist, so like I can barely see in front of my nose. So
I'll throw something out at you.
Yeah.
So if one of the other things for port congestions, I've got to have a problem to solve here. One of the problems is the small guys. How do the ports deal with the small guys? That's the biggest group of the market, are guys that ship a container, 2 containers, 5 containers. They're not Walmart. Walmart has peel-off stacks. They've got 100 containers coming off of one ship.
They have relationships with the port directly. Yeah.
Oh, they're enormous.
Yeah.
And so the terminal says, I'll put all your containers over here in this designated stack. And you just send in 100 truckers, and we don't worry about which container goes on which truck. They just take the next one.
Right.
No moving, no digging. And that's hugely effective. Tioga Group, consulting guys in California, did a study for the Port of Long Beach in 2018, saying if you could get to 85% peel off, you'd be maximizing efficiency of your current technology, the cranes, the way you do business. It's a process change. Problem, there's only a couple of Walmarts out there.
And there's a few million 1 to 2 TEU a month shippers. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So what would happen if you're in a municipality, you're in a platform, a community, a platform that's servicing a couple of thousand different customers? That same server could combine those volumes, not sharing information, not giving away any.
But aggregate.
That's the right. And say to the terminal, how about we run one for us? And we'll dispatch 100 truckers, and we'll tell the trucker where to go once we know what container got on that specific one.
Yeah.
And Port of Savannah is talking with us about that.
Yeah.
We're talking to some big trucking companies about that. And this is that next level of what can we do with technology and how do we combat congestion?
Well, Bryn, I'll have to have you back, and we can just do the whole thing on peel offs, because there's a lot of interesting layers to dig into on that, and why it hasn't taken off more than it has, and whether I don't think tech is the constraint. Let's put it that way. We're running up against time. I have to ask a question I sign off with all my guests. Who's your favorite band or musician? And then you have to tell me why.
All right. Well, I'm going to go with, it's not really a band or a musician. It's a musical.
Okay.
So it's a whole bunch of songs, and it's Les Miserables.
Okay.
Victor Hugo's classic, and it's positive. It's a message. It's if it's going to be, it's up to me. I can deal with all that's ahead of me, all of the weights that the earth, that life puts on me, if I keep moving forward and I'm honest and I'm good. Then I love that.
That's a great message. All right, cool. Well, that's a new one to add to the Logtech playlist. Bryn, I appreciate it. We barely scratched the surface on a bunch of this stuff, but what's the best way for people to reach out to you?
Bryn.Heimbeck@tradetech.net. I'm on LinkedIn. Go to our website, www.tradetech.net. Eric, thanks. It's always a pleasure talking with you. It's so much fun.
You as well, Bryn. Thanks so much for the time and great conversation.
Thanks.
Yeah, talk soon. All right, definitely reach out to Bryn, a wealth of information, and also thinks, as you can probably tell, really at a high level about all this stuff. All right, dad joke of the week time before we say goodbye. What does a carpenter say when he's finished building a house? Nailed it. Get it? Get it? All right. It's not my best one, but every single house in our neighborhood is under construction these days, so I had like house renovation on the mind. Thank you to Bryn. Fantastic conversation. Really appreciated his insights on a bunch of different things. Definitely reach out to him. Thank you to Nicole, Let's Talk Supply Chain team. So easy to work with. They make my job so easy. But most of all, thank you to everyone who tuned in today. Wouldn't do this show if you all didn't tune in every 2 weeks. We have a great next episode in 2 weeks with our first repeat guest in the history of Logtech Live. In fact, both episodes in June, the next 2 episodes are going to be repeat guests for the first time ever. So really excited to have them back. In any case, have a great rest of your Friday and have a fantastic weekend, and I'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye, everyone.